Right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. We're quite surprised I'm actually turned up. It's really great to see you all. So, you're here tonight to hear about the Romans. They come to the right place. I don't know if you've seen all the stuff we've got, our fans, our little pop-up museum. If not, have a get later on. Well, I'm the project lead, and that's what we match. It's falling off. If you push too hard, you play break, you don't do it fall off. Yeah, Matthew Crittenden, and I'm project lead. I've been involved with it now for 7 years. And over the 7 years, we've learned one heck of a lot of what's going on in Rome, River and Rough, on your Petuaria. We've rewritten history that many times, it beggars belief. It's every year something new turns up. And tonight we've got Peter and James who are going to tell you a bit about everything that we've found so far. James is going to be specialising on geophys, and he'll be going first tonight. And after James has done his bits, we'll have a little bit of a break because it's hot. And then after a 10-minute break, then we'll come back in again and Peter will finish off on what we've learnt on the Burrs, as well as what we may have learnt on Cave Road with the Maritime project, which is going to feature quite heavily in this tonight. So without further ado, James.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Martin. So as you've heard tonight, we're going to be a double actor. Bit of a long and hard here. I'll let you choose which one is which. But I should begin. But what I'm going to be talking about is about geophysical surveys that we've been carrying out over a number of years. So we started off the main project roundabout. Well, Peter got me to do a survey first in 2014. And then after that, as Petuaria Revisited took off, we've done various projects. So ERA, NetRev, Roman Roads have all funded bits of this geophysical survey that I'm going to be talking about tonight. Right, so here we are. I haven't got a pointer, so you'll have to forgive me for stepping in front of the screen, but there's Brough, Welton, Melton, Brantingham, Ellicott, South Cave. The red bits are the bits I've done in terms of geophysical survey. The blue bits are the bits that have been done commercially. So lots of activity in Melton, Welton, where they're building all those commercial units. The first survey that was done in this area was this one. That was done in 1996, and it was done for creating that roundabout that's there now. The next one was me in 1999, up there. Tiny little bit of a pipeline. I didn't even know I was that close to Brough when I did it. Because I'd come the other way, I didn't know I was so close to the Humber. But over the years, that's how many surveys. There have been others done which I don't have yet, which still annoys me. But round here, there are surveys that have been done that I haven't got hold of. What I'm going to do is look at a few of them, little bits and pieces, to show you what we can get from geophysics.
I think we have the lights down.
What, so they can't see my beautiful face? Okay, so here we go, right. You're missing the bottom, but you don't need to see that. These are the magnetic surveys. So geophysics takes various forms. There's actually about 9 or 10 different ways we can do things. But generally speaking, there's about 2 or 3 we use in the UK, and the main one is magnetics. We start off, there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is it's quicker. You can just walk up and down and collect the data. The second one is it's cheaper. So that's why we do it this way. But so magnetic surveys over that area now. Resistivity is another form of survey. So magnetics just measures an ambient magnetic field. If you really want to know how it works, I'll talk to you about that afterwards, because it's quite boring. But resistivity works in a different way. It's just measuring the resistance between two probes. not very much been done there. The third form is radar. Very little been done. The reason for that is it's even more expensive and it needs to have lovely flat ground for you to do it on. So, but that's where all the surveys have been done in your area. I'm just going to have a look. This is by parish, so you've got Welton here. Most of that was done commercially. This bit was done, Peter paid me to do stuff, and EOS did some stuff even before that. Here's Ellerton, Cumbrath, Ellerker, Brantingham, Ellerker and South Cave. So, what do we know before we start surveying? These are crop mark plots. Now what they are is where people fly over the area with a plane and take pictures of what's underneath them. And occasionally crop marks are visible. Now crop marks only form when crops are under stress. So what you need is conditions like we've got today. We need drought conditions. I remember that. It's alright. It's fine. And so what you need for a crop mark to form is somebody's dug a hole there and it's filled in. But that hole contains more moisture. And so when you're under drought conditions or stress conditions, the crop then that's above those bits that have the wet bits show as green lines. And so English Heritage, or Historic England as they are now, have for many years been doing a thing called the National Mapping Programme, which is looking at it all over England, and this is part of that. So this is Cave Road here, for those of you who don't know, and that's Brantingham over there. So I'm going to be looking at this bit in particular, because we already knew quite a lot, as you can see, about what was going on. There's lots of things that are missing though. There's an empty field here, and there's a Roman villa here, which you can't see. Which we can't see with geophysics either, because we're not allowed to survey that at this stage, but we will get there eventually. So there's where we've done the mag. There's two holes in our magnetics, one here, which I'll come on to later, and one there. I want to concentrate first though on this field. If you remember, I've done this right. Yeah, it's empty in terms of crop marks. So there's never been any crop marks formed there that people have seen. So we thought, well, let's go and do a geophysical survey in that one. And it's not empty. So we have a massive trackway running up that way, heading off up in that direction, then turning off into that field, some little bits and bobs. There's another trackway here, and what's unusual about Brantingham, in a sense, is all the trackways are heading up towards Brantingham, where it is now. So that's two of them, but there's another two that we know of that are going towards it for some reason. Right, so I'll just go back. I want to have a look now at these things here, these little round things, because those are not Roman. And as I know Martin said, you're all here to hear about the Romans, but I actually prefer prehistory to the Romans, always have done. And so I'm going to concentrate on those for a bit. These are Bronze Age round barrows, so they are where people were burying their dead. From about 2200 BC to about sort of 1000 BC-ish. What I like about these though is a number of different versions of them. So you've got the standard round barrow, you've got the round barrow with an entrance, you've got what they call a pond barrow, which is like a dip, and you've got little ones here, various different types. Of these, that one, and that one didn't show up on the aerial photographs. We don't know why. Unless you dig a hole, you won't find out. What's also interesting is this thing here. I think that's the first one. That's probably much earlier. That's probably a Neolithic barrow, which that one then references to. So what would happen is, in the Neolithic, they create this mortuary enclosure where they put people in, and then afterwards those things would still be visible, and in the Bronze Age they come along and stick one of those in front of it to continue using it. It's referencing the ancestors, if you like. Now, I always feel a bit iffy using terms like Bronze Age, Neolithic, Iron Age. People don't know what they mean. And they don't actually mean anything to the people who were living back then. We create them as archaeologists because we dig holes, and lower down is the Neolithic, then the Bronze Age, then the Iron Age, then the Romans, then the Vikings, then the medieval period, and so on. But in fact, these people would not have felt any different. I use an example like this. Exactly that. What would people who dig us up? James Bond, what does that say about the different? But it's an opposite point exactly here. If people were digging us up, that's what they would be finding. Microchips everywhere. In every single thing we've got. Cars, these, those, phones, they're everywhere. So if they started digging us up, we'd suddenly be the microchip age. But I remember a time when we didn't have them. I was born a long time ago. And so there were no computers when I was around as a child. And yet when they came along, I started using them. But I'm not any different in my head to the person who was there before they came along. Same, if you think about Bronze Age, Iron Age, Neolithic, just think about that. The people are the same. They're merely using a different technology that comes along. So archaeologists impose these arbitrary lines on them. They wouldn't have felt that. They would have just been us. Just people getting different things. So anyway, so here we've got very old. There, so when we talk very old, we're talking 4000 BC. Then maybe 2000 BC. There will be something else up there. I want to concentrate on that bit up there for a wee while. Before I do that, though, I want to talk a little bit about Google Earth and how people looking at Google Earth can make massive mistakes. So here, this was a Google Earth image, 2017. I've enhanced it a bit. But what people saw here was that and that. And what they created was the edge of a Roman fort and a Roman road, which was actually adding 2 and 2 together and making 10. Because when we did the survey, that's what it actually is. So it's not a Roman fort, it's the trackway that we'd seen previously, doing a weird wiggly thing around here and heading off in that direction. And the Roman road is in fact 2 different things. One of them is an old field boundary and one is a modern drain. This one here, look. You see the drain coming up there, joining up with that lot. So you've got to be very careful when you look at Google imagery and think you can see things, because a little knowledge is a dangerous thing when it comes to interpreting archaeological things. There's a couple of other things I want to point out here. One is that this splodge here is all caused by the pylons that go across that. So, because this is a magnetic survey, the electric pylons, these are big ones, cause a massive disturbance underneath them. And also I want to point out those little things just there. Just remember those. We did some resistivity survey here because Chris, who is here today, told us that when he was walking around it, they found a load of things metal detecting and also some stones in that area. We thought, well, there might be a building in there. So resistivity is generally quite good at finding walls. So we did the resistivity, but unfortunately we didn't find anything that indicated a building in there. So negative evidence doesn't necessarily mean there isn't one there, but we didn't find it. Right, the holes I mentioned earlier, this is one of them. So we see this zone down here, and then we've got this one here. So we've got an area that we really wanted to cover. So we did that in just before COVID, I think. We did this first one. And then we went back. But unfortunately, it was one day after green waste had been put on the field. And this is the result of green waste for magnetics. Now, I've now done this on about 3 different fields, and the result is always the same. Once the green waste has been put on, you cannot survey it magnetically anymore. It's gone. It's not the farmer's fault, because the farmers are encouraged to use this stuff to enrich the soil. But I would say it's anything but green, because all of those little blobs are little bits of iron and steel. And when we did the survey, we could see all sorts of stuff. I'm sure Chris will remember. There was bits of dull, plastic, everything was mixed in with it. So green waste is a misnomer. It's not green by any stretch of the imagination. Now, one thing I do want to do is go back and test it again and see if we do a little bit of magnetics, see if that diminishes over time, but I suspect it won't. Or also go and try resistivity there. But it's disappointing to me for a reason that we're going to come on to in a moment. I tried to minimize the effect of it by getting rid of all the high values, but all we found was this big sort of quarry pit there. There's nothing else obvious. Just going back, I'm sure I've missed something I was going to say. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, there. I was talking about Bronze Age and Neolithic, but in this bit, there's that little thing there. That is not Bronze Age or Neolithic, that is Iron Age. So that's a square hole, which is typical in this part of the country, only in East Yorkshire and a bit into North Yorkshire. So that's Iron Age, roughly from about 500 to about 100 BC. That's the only time they occur. But look how faint it looks. They're very difficult targets to find these things magnetically. And going back to what I was showing, you can see the square burrows up there. I was hoping to find a whole cemetery of the things. But unfortunately, there is no way on earth that you're going to find something that subtle. If you look at it, it's just a vague little hint there. Once you've got that on it, you've had it. You're not going to find that. And I'm tempted to go back and do this bit again after the green waste is on, just to show what happens if you do that. Because you might be able to find some of these big things, but you're not going to find those little subtle features. So even if they were there, we're never going to see them now. Right, Roman roads. This is South Cave. South Cave is just to the north of this, and this is the Roman road. You might not believe it, but there, and it's defined by quarry pits. So Roman roads are often, everybody thinks, oh, they're a big stone thing with a load of ditches next to them, but in fact they're not. They vary massively depending where they are relative to towns, forts, and across the country. But we were quite happy to find this one. It was supposed to be here, according to the original plan, but it was about sort of 30 metres away from where it was. So, okay, let's continue south and see if we can find it. So the bit we'd seen is up there, but as you come to the south, we've lost it completely. There's no hint of it here. So Roman roads are difficult targets as well. This is quite interesting. That's a ladder settlement, and the South Cave Hoard with all the weapons in it was just about there somewhere. Right, coming down to Maritime Service. I don't know how much Peter's going to say about this, but we're now surveying gardens at Cave Road. So that's the golf course. This is Cave Road here, and we're over there somewhere at the moment. I'll have a look and show you what we get. So magnetically, gardens are a real pain, as you can see, because people do stuff in them that we don't want. And this, for instance, is the remains of a tennis court, which is no longer there. There are loads of pipes all over the place. That's a field, a drain of some description. But magnetically, doing gardens is almost pointless, because that's what you get. There are vague hints of some things. A little hint of something there and there and there. but you wouldn't normally pick those out. So we did resistivity on part of this, because the thing is we know there's a building here because they dug it in 1977. So we know there's a Roman building there, but we can't see it magnetically. So there we are. Resistivity is showing a little bit more now, so we've lost a lot of that magnetic interference. We've got potentially a wall there, so it's the light colours that are the high resistance where we think there might be walls. So what we did a sort of 1 metre resolution survey, so which is fairly coarse. So then we thought, well, it'd be interesting to do a higher resolution survey in this bit. And so you get a much better definition. Now you can see we've got a wall there, there, and there. And we've also got these odd square things which are probably ditches. So we need to extend our survey that way and that way with the resistivity. But it's really hard work. So if anybody wants to come and help us, please feel free. It's volunteers only. Quite happy to come in now, and you can pick the thing up and stick it in, and I can guarantee you, if you've done a day of it, you won't need to go to the gym. Right, golf course. Golf course is interesting. I have to say that I was very pleased with the golf course here, because all the other golf courses I've ever been involved with have been very difficult to get access to. In fact, I had one tell me once that, yeah, you can come and survey it if it's on Christmas Day. That was it. But here they were really helpful. But it did help that we had COVID. And so when COVID was on, just the first one, when they weren't allowed to play golf, I had free access to the whole golf course, and myself and my son, because we were a bubble, I taught him how to do geophysics, so we came and did the whole thing. But this is Cave Road here, and the interesting bit is this bit nearest where the town is. And so you've got all sorts of things going on. I suspect the actual road is here, and we didn't quite find it. So it's under Cave Road. So the Roman road coming out must be here somewhere. But we have all these interesting things going on, and some kind of quarrying activity. There's also Second World War activity, this lot here. But to me, it's this bit. It's the first fairway that intrigues me because of that lot there. So here, this lot could be a number of things, but it could be some kind of prehistoric monument. This one may be Neolithic, but that intrigues me. And I don't know if you know where I'm going to be going with this, but this might give you a clue. An inscription. And it's the only inscription found in East Riding, found in the Burrs, saying that a stage had been built. Okay. I'm going to point something out to you. The only evidence for this being Petuaria is that there. That's the P, and that's some other letter. That's it. That's That's why we call this Petuaria. So you can see we're on scanty ground here. But having said that, it was found. Now, there's only one other theatre in Britain that I know of that's been fully excavated, which is in St Albans. So what I did is I plotted it at the same scale. So that's Verulamium or St Albans, and that's Petuaria or Bruff. Now, forget the outside bit. That's not the theatre. Look at this area here, and look at that area there. To me, I think we've got quite a convincing sort of picture building up that the theatre might be outside the actual town walls here, which it is in St Albans, to be fair. So, because the one in St Albans you have to go and pay for because it's privately owned. But what I would dearly love to do is go and dig a hole in it. But I don't think the golf course would be so keen on just digging a hole on the first fairway. I think that might be a step too far. And on that note, I think it's time for us to take a short break before my colleague Peter will carry on after 10 minutes and show you more about the excavation part of our project. Oh yeah.
One thing you learn of these guys is the fact that they keep so much close to the chest. And there's so much on that presentation that I didn't know myself. Like a bit of a struggle. Keep a secret. Everything, archaeology evolves all the time.
There's plenty more, Martin.
I know, some of those pictures, some of those, I've never seen it, and it's phenomenal what you're doing now. So you we're keeping it a bit secret.
You keep paying me, I'll keep doing it.
But yeah, I must admit we are very lucky to have two of the top-notch dig directors in the ground. I mean, I can't pick these up. Well, round here anyway.
Yorkshire.
In Yorkshire, in the UK, they're absolutely fantastic pair of them. James Lyall, he's just a flipping. No, he is great, brilliant. So if you want to go back in there and get another drink, and have a look around and maybe buy something. Right then, second attempts. Thanks for coming back. I know we want you when you couldn't get out, so I mean, you don't have much option. Right, you've had the best, now get on the best. It's a Halkon.
Thank you. Right. This is the photograph. Can we have the lights down, please? It's much easier to see the screen. This is rather historic photograph, considering the bit to the left of the photos you're looking at has changed rather radically. But the point this photograph makes is why Burrs is where it is. On the top right, you can see the field boundaries all curving. In Roman times and in the Iron Age, that was under water. There was a massive tidal inlet extending almost to Market Wheaton, narrowing off a lot at the top. So Burrs is ideally situated on the Humber and this great tidal inlet. Why is that significant? Follow up the Ouse, and where are you? Brantingham, which is an imperial capital no less than 3 times. 3 times? Septimius Severus dies there in AD 211. The imperial family was stationed there. His wife Julia Domno was Syrian, Septimius Severus from Libya, what's today Libya, and the 2 sons Geta and Caracalla. Hadrian, before that, when Hadrian's Wall was built in the 120s, almost certainly would have been positioned in York and probably ran the whole of the building of Hadrian's Wall from there as a centre. Go to 306 and you go to York Minster today, what you see outside, the statue of Constantine. He starts his career eventually becoming the sole emperor in York, and it's because his father was in a campaign recovering Britain from rebel emperors. He dies, and Constantine's Germanic troops declare him Caesar in succession, and eventually defeats his opponents and becomes the sole Augustus, the sole emperor. Why is he important? He's the emperor that tolerated Christianity. Had it not been for Constantine, the Catholic Church would not really have existed and Christianity might have faded completely. Anyway, Burrs is important because it's a central place, a middle place between the Humber, the North Sea and York. Okay. Now, archaeological work's been known for quite a long time in Burrs. And this is our first record of it. A coin exactly like this one. This isn't the original, but this is the same coin. Was found by a Mr. Robert Mason. And he sent this coin to the curate of Holy Trinity Church now Hull Minster, one Abraham de la Prime, who was a curate and an antiquary, an early archaeologist, who identified it, asked him where it came from, and he sent this long letter back, translating the inscription. It's of the Emperor Hadrian, and he gives a date for it. And then he goes on to say, as to the town where it was found, it is an old Roman town, the landing place of their forces out of Lincolnshire, and as soon as they had got over, they cast up 3 huge banks, one of them which ran towards York, another towards the north by Brantingham, yet to be seen, another towards Beverley, and thence to Paffington, scarce visible. And last of all, when the Roman forces were all sent home in great haste about the year 400 to defend their own country from barbarous natives that intruded, the soldiers and inhabitants that were very rich here hid their money and treasure in thousands of places in this land. So there we are. Chris, get your detector out. There's some more to be found. And Dave, we've got some excellent metal detectors with us today. So it's clear that, coins and things were known. We move on in time to another antiquary, writing this wonderfully titled piece, Britannia Romana, or the Roman Antiquities of Britain in 3 books. And Horsley actually came and visited Burrs, and this is what he says. The one side of the town seems to stand on the west rampart, and for 50 or 60 yards there is somewhat very like the foundations of a rampart. A rampart's a big defensive bank. In several places there appears to be uneven ground like little foundations, and I actually saw a little square foundation just dug up. Though there is still stuff to see within the town, or small village as it was then. We move on, 1736. Francis Drake, not the chap who played bowls and defeated the Armada, the major relatives. A polymath, he's a member of the Royal Society, and he did a marvellous book called Eber Arkham. And he played about with the known Roman roads and place names, and most of them are not accepted. For those with very sharp eyes, Petuaria is floating about more or less where Beverley is. And Burrs is marked on the map as the start of the Roman road, but clearly the Roman antiquities at Burrs hadn't made an impact on Drake. This is the first edition of the survey map in the 1840s. It shows you once Burrs was a very small village. And had it not been for the expansion of Burrs with the railway, with the aircraft factory, we might have had opportunities like the other major Roman towns, of Rochester, Silchester, to reveal a whole Roman town. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and archaeology was very piecemeal. Old records were made at that time, and you can see on the Burrs playing field, it does record finds of Roman pottery, coins, and other items. We've got to move on now to the 1930s, when an incredible chap who I greatly admire because of his very similar career. He started as a school teacher at Bootham School, the Quaker school in York, and he set up a group in the 1930s to explore the Romans in East Yorkshire. And his main acolyte is a suitably dressed for an excavation lady in pure white, who's Mary Kitson Clark, or Mary Derwas Chitty, as she came when she was married. And she's important because she wrote the first gazetteer of Roman remains in East Yorkshire, which is still a very useful document. So they dug until 1937 through the Hull University College Local History Committee and the Burrs Excavation Committee, And they dug for a month, and amazingly produced a nice little report in detail, full pottery reports, all the coins listed, all the brooches drawn, within a year. Fantastic work. Well, I suppose they didn't watch much telly in those days, did they? And they found the conquest period. For conquest, that is AD 70-71, when the Romans crossed into this region. They found the walled enclosure, and they found the theatre inscription. It's much clearer, actually, on the original photographs, the P, E and T and a bit of the U. Unfortunately, the stone, which we hope to get a replica made of, is suffering even now within the case, and has deteriorated a lot since the 1930s. It's a clumsy reconstruction as well. The chap who found it is wearing the tank top, and the main people who did the work aren't photographed. These are the supervisory staff, and basically Cornet hired a load of workmen out of work farm labourers and various other people to do the digging, which they did in long, narrow trenches. And here's one such trench. I love this photo. Dignitaries we don't know where from, but in suits and nice coats and hats, etc., inspecting one of Corder's trenches, in which they've got this very nice tower. And those of you who know the Burrs will immediately recognise where this is in that northwest corner. Although the house to the left of the screen is still there, it's much expanded, but you know, we can spot where that tower is exactly. Here's a theatre inscription, and it's important. It's set up by an Aediles town councillor called Marcus Ulpius Januarius, who actually know the name of a person who lived in Brough, and he lived in about 140 or so AD. We know that because the front of the inscription lists the name of the emperor, who was, in short, Antoninus Pius, as his kind of nickname. He was the successor to Hadrian. And one of the things he tried to do was, Hadrian gave lots of money and support to grow Roman towns in Britain, to make the British civilized and more like the Romans. And I think this creation of a theatre inscription is all to do with that. There's another reason for this, because his job was an aedile. An aedile was a member of a town council. Here we have Mr. Richard Meredith, our own town councillor.
No, he's East Riding councillor.
East Riding councillor, and we've got town councillors.
It's the town councils that keep me in line.
Yeah, so we've got town councillors here. Well, they had a town councillor in Brough in AD 114.
Was it so?
He was, this is, yeah. And guess what? He was running for an election. So what did he do? How can I get into power again? Oh, I know, I'll build a new stage for a theatre, which he does at his own expense, which is what the bottom of the inscription says. It's important. Not only tells us about a chap running for office, that there was a theatre in Brough, which James may have found with his geophysics, but he's a Roman citizen. He's got 3 names, a tri-nomen. And one of the names is of the imperial family, Ulpius, the name of Trajan's family, the predecessor to Hadrian. Because of the date, it's probably more likely to be his grandfather who was awarded the citizenship. So he's a very important man in Brough. Anyway, let's speed through. There's been a lot of debate, and John Waiter, who did the next bit of work, said the stone was a red herring which has misled archaeologists. Well, Waiter kept changing his mind about Brough, what actually it was. And we'll come back to Waiter in a moment. And there he is, looking very much like he did when he was here digging in Brough. He lived to his 90s, became a very eminent professor at Leicester University. And he's written the only big monograph, the only sole work to do with Brough, which is quite a fantastic piece of work. And it was based, though, on quite small excavation trenches. And this is the frontispiece and another piece from it. He excavated the north gate, and you can see the reconstruction, which is probably a little bit iffy. But we've got some evidence for it, but we see the complex phases in the plan, which you can see there. The next work really was done by the East Riding Archaeological Society, led by Peter Armstrong, who was left Hull Museum as curator and who joined the newly formed Humberside Archaeology Unit. He started digging there out through the unit, and then it was passed on to the East Riding Archaeological Society, and the geophysics that you saw, James Lyall Cave Road, was around this amazing site. Look at the back of the picture and you can see a very flat land at Walling Fen. So I think what we may have here is a possible, maybe a small port or something like that. But in the display cabinets put out this evening, thanks to the owner for lending it some of the material from that site. Here's the plan of it to give you some idea of the scale and complexity. And we know that that site's at least 5 or 6 times bigger than that, and covers an area equivalent to the Burrs at Cave Road. And we are anxious to do more of the fields along Cave Road as possible, and gardens. Well, my first involvement with Brough was in 1980 for the East Riding Archaeological Society, and the chap squatting down with a brown shirt in the middle of the right-hand side picture is me. Unfortunately, most of the people on there are now dead. And they kept the archaeological record, which has gone missing. So these pictures and an attic full of Roman pottery are most of what's left. Peter Jackson looked after the pottery, really forgot about it, and when he died and his attic was cleared, the Humberside unit got a phone call. We found this attic full of Roman pottery. And that was about the only person who knew where it came from. Some important discoveries though at Petra area close, and this house built by Gordon Cates, a Roman oven, almost certainly military, and to do with the conquest period, those first 30 years when the Romans first established the fort at Brough. Those coins are found there. We've got coins of Vespasian and Domitian, and Nerva. We've got the dates there, and a threshold and a drain cut off by Blackburn's Leisure Centre. There's a swimming pool there, small Blackburn's Club there. We also found what we think is a rampart base, me in the brown shirt again. Were very different coloured hair in those days, and much thinner. Anyway, the next work was done in 1988. Steve Jallens did a resistivity survey, and you can see the stippling on Bodder's Field gave hints that there was more to find than Corder had. And Corder's work is shown by those black lines. Most archaeologists, James suggested, is done by commercial units. And one of the biggest in this region was the York Archaeological Trust, who excavated the site, a large site on Welsham Road, finding things a little bit more rural towards that side. The T-shaped malting oven or corn dryer, cremations and inhumation burials and animal burials and fields as well. Now, for a book I did fairly recently, I plotted all that was known of Roman Brough in 2013. And I chose to be very rigorous about this. And those little temple icons, which are actually a GIS thing for a bank, but they look a bit like Roman buildings, are where there are definitely stone Roman buildings. And if you look at that, you can see it's a large settlement. The top one there is the villa at Brantingham, but it extends right the way past Morrison's supermarket. So think about that next time you're walking around Brough, doing your shopping or whatever. It's under your feet. There's an awful lot of things still to find. Before we move on, that shows the position of the Roman road and the former tidal inlet. The colours there show you the rising ground of the walls up at the top. So it's a key position in the landscape, in the land as well, close to the Yorkshire Wolds. So the Peshawar Area Revisited project was really set up after those initial discoveries by James in 2014, thanks to Sue and Martin really, in conversation, and we kind of had similar ideas at the same time, that we really had to do something to put Brough more on a map. And our aims are to determine the character, development, extent of Roman Brough, know exactly how big it is. And here you are, involve the community of Brough and district in exploring their own Roman heritage. This isn't just for us. This isn't just for pompous academic books. This so you can understand your Roman town.
And pass it on to your grandchildren.
Benefit the community of Brough by restoring a sense of place and identity lost by a contraction of BAE systems, the region they employ, and utilise its heritage to promote tourism as an economic boost. Goodness me, we need that kind of thing. And what's been really evident is you could have put, asked people to put hands up on site who worked there at BAE. And it was at least, on some occasions, out of, say, a workforce of 30, any one day 10, they were ex-BAE employers of some kind, or employees of some kind. So this is filling a place in their lives as well. Promote well-being through active community participation. The government is very keen on that. And they should have said from the start that our projects have been given a major boost and financial contribution by the Levelling Up programme by the government. Because we've got some funding through setting up Peshawar Revisited, we managed to get David Staveley along to do ground penetrating radar. And I hope you've noticed on the right hand side the changing picture. All those Roman buildings now disappearing, which are under the Burrs. We'll play that through again. So we start off with a football pitch, nicely marked out. Then a shaded area caused by a levelling up area of limestone. The Roman road appearing diagonally across the picture and the defences. And then you can see a courtyard building in the bottom corner, loads and loads of them. All those are Roman buildings. So all over the Burrs there are structures. Now, we were deceived. Oh, I got it wrong. Yes, mea culpa. But yeah, well, there's the reconstruction of the theatre at St Albans, and we saw this D-shaped structure, albeit a lot smaller, inside this courtyard building. And we thought, that's certainly worth a look. So that's why we decided we could put the trench across it in our first season. Here's the scheduled area. So we had to get permission from Historic England to excavate, which we did for 2 seasons. So there's James, hard hat on, health and safety and all that. And you can see just about behind James a yellowish thorny coloured layer. And that is limestone that was laid down in 1971 to protect the archaeology, as the farmland was turned into a playing field. Now this is a close-up of that D-shaped structure in the courtyard building. But what is fascinating is when we put the excavation photo on, you can see there is an exact coincidence between what we found in the ground and the geophysics. But again, a cautionary note. Although that D shape did seem to coincide, we found it was basically a thin layer of stone, and it was about 150 years too late to be the theatre. However, this doesn't mean to say that our dig was a failure. Certainly not. So anyway, here are the excavation trenches that some of you may remember of the courtyard building. Hands and knees troweling away to get a nice flat surface. We found the hearth, the latest thing, and a stone spread running across the centre of the site. And thanks to Tom Sparrow, we got 3D photography of all these, which shows the three periods of the first year's excavation by photogrammetry. The hearth, a stone spread, then the D-shaped thin stone layer towards the centre, and at the bottom of it, the stone wall foundations from an earlier building. And the trenches in the middle were the foundation trenches of the courtyard building. Here's the hearth, the stone spread. Most of the stone had been removed, possibly by Archbishop Walter de Grey of York. Why go and dig stone out of a quarry when you can just go onto the Burrs and demolish Roman buildings? Clearly, when Horsley visited, there was still some left. But by the time Corder got there, there wasn't any. And there's only one bit of worked stone in the whole of that trench in the middle there, one nice ashlar block. Here are the foundation trenches of one of the rooms, at each side, those slots. And basically what had happened is that the ceiling on one of the walls, painted wall plaster fallen flat down. So that was the back of the whole wall of painted wall plaster, which, thanks to Jim Mooring, the local builder, were able to lift part of it. The rest was impossible to lift intact. And what we've got there is evidence of what the building was like. It had underfloor heating, intra-wall heating, something I think called a hypercaust, and it had painted wall plaster on it as well. So very well to do, and James being very daring, picking up that bit of plaster.
Yeah, they filmed me hoping I was going to break it.
Well, you
You
did.
said you because you didn't want St. Peter in.
Oh, thank you, sir, for that vote of confidence. Right. Anyway, Mick's in the audience. Our lucky finder can't get him on the site because he'll find all the best things. Anyway, here he is digging away. First of all, there's a pile of tiles, and then under it, as we went down, a pit which contained loads and loads of oyster shells and 2 pots, and those are in the case over in the display. What I think we're looking at is a meal, and it's not just rubbish. I'm pretty sure, because this is repeated elsewhere, this is the equivalent of a foundation deposit before they built the building. Today we have topping up ceremonies. In Roman times, you made an offering before you started the building, and this is almost certainly what we have here. The building burnt down at one stage, and we've got Corder's accounts here that said aligned with these footings and resting on the western side was a later wall. He goes on describing it. The base course, 2 feet 6 inches wide, carried a 2-foot wall whose stones showed clearly that it had been destroyed by fire. Patches of contemporary flooring showed signs of burning. Now, there's Richard excavating a panel of wood which had fallen off the wall. And certainly in the first year we found a thick layer of ash, which matches almost certainly what Corder had found. Underneath that building, however, there was another building, a very large building, which we only know about it was this large wall. This is just the core. A Roman building technique was to have facing stones and fill it with rubble and cement. That's standard. Hadrian's Wall is built just like that. All the ashlar, all the facing stones have been removed, and all we've got left there is the core. But it must be a massive building. So we opened the trench in 2021 and did some more exploration. The finds we got were extensive. Oh, that's during cold red, wearing a mask, as you can see. And some nice dating evidence, coins, Julie Domna, who I've mentioned already, the wife of Septimius Severus, the emperor. And it's interesting that she is so important enough to have her own coins. The hairstyles are copied all over. And if you go to the Yorkshire Museum in York, you see a fine head pot, which probably was created when the imperial family were in York. Carausius there, very brutal looking guy, he was a Belgian from the Menarche tribe who declared Brexit from the Roman Empire and set up his own empire of Belgium, France and Britain. And he was actually the admiral of the fleet, and his sidekick was called the Electus. He had a cunning plan. What he did was get his troops, his soldiers, his sailors, to sell near ports, wait till the pirates who were supposed to be stopping from sacking the towns, sack the towns, and then capture the ships and take all the treasure. Now this did not go down well with the real Roman emperor, who immediately sent Constantius Chlorus to stop this. But what does he do? What does the Carausius do? He says, ooh, I have to make myself emperor then. He had a lot of loyal troops, so for some time Carausius was the sole emperor in Britain. He was succeeded by Electus, because Electus, I always think of Gordon Brown and Tony Blair here. Electus actually bumped off Carausius, murdered him, and was emperor, but only for a very short time. The last coin kind of finishes the story off quite nicely. It's of Constantine I. And there's a very big peak of coins of Constantine from the site. Now the bit of pottery held in, I think probably Martin's fingers, is very, very important. It's in the first bucket of the first digger of the first day that was digging on the Burrs. And why is it important? It's very late Roman pottery called Cranbeck painted parchment ware, which doesn't start being made until about 340 to 360 AD and goes to at least to 400. Now, people had said before that by that time Bruff was failing. Failing as the county town of the tribe, the Civitas capital of the tribe who were the Parisi. So in one bucketful, we've actually made a major discovery. Another nice thing is this, an oyster shell, and some bright person noticed there's been scratched with little engraving on the inside. And there's also an X. Now, James had a bright idea that that was a theatre ticket
Seat 11.
Yeah, seat 11. Or 9 if you turn it the other way around. The other late Roman finds are these, the bone needle case, counter jet objects as well, and other fancy tweezers, bracelet, jet bead, and some nice military things as well. The belt buckle on display in the cabinet, and this crossbow brooch. And there's a silver dish in the British Museum which shows how one of these things was worn. And they are particular to late military soldiers and government officials. And there were grades of these, big gold ones for very, very, very important people, and slightly more scrappy ones like this one for less important people. So we looked at the courtyard building, which is occupied in different forms right through the Roman period. We now want to the defences. We've already seen corders trenches. So we did in the north-east corner, and we're rather stymied by, we still don't know quite what it is. It's probably a Second World War brick structure. Possibly the entrance to air raid shelter, possibly a culvert, we're not sure. But underneath that, we did find the eastern edge of a ditch. You can see the yellow sand at the top of the photograph, which is the edge of the black silt. It was so deep that we really didn't have time to dig it within the whole size. At the other end, on Grassdale, we also did an excavation, and under difficult conditions, and we worked out there was a ditch there. The garage, by the way, as you can see in the picture, that concrete structure there, was a second building, because they built the first one, which sank into the former Roman ditch and had to be underpinned again. But there was certainly Roman activity there. So here's the Burrs. Thanks, Chris, for this photo. And here's our excavation trenches. And here's what Corder found. Seen a bit of wall there. We were struggling a bit to actually match that up with what we found, but we got there in the end. And here we are in the two trenches, 21 and 22. And we got very excited about that rubbly mass. But that turned out to be fairly ephemeral because the major structure was underneath that. And this is last year. We did manage to dig thanks to that marquee, because it is remembered territory. And we were able to better understand the defences. The top being the clay bank or rampart. Underneath that, a stone base, which you can see here. And then right at the bottom there, a sand rampart. And the later wall is built on this herringbone type masonry above that sand rampart. And you can see there Matthew squatting, looking at the wall. Some nice intact stonework. But the rest of the trench is a mess, because Philip Corder dug narrow trenches all over the place trying to find an internal turret. But he did miss bits, as you'll see in a moment. Here's the base of the clay rampart. We've got the sand rampart, see the different phases. This year we're going to open up a much bigger area to show that relationship more clearly. And right at the bottom we've got these beam slots, probably from the very early fort in the 1870s. The big surprise was twofold. James noticed this alignment of herringbone masonry running inside the wall. This is one of the walls of the turret that Corder had been looking for and missed. Then Matthew was digging in the corner and noticed the wall projecting up towards Welton Road. And to our great excitement, we found this, an external tower, which puts the whole thing under a different picture. We'll show that in a moment. About the time the wall was built, elsewhere in Britain, we have these things called the Saxon shore forts. And on a recent holiday with my wife and grandson in the photograph, the scale, we went down to Pevensey, which is best preserved. Believe it or not, all that stonework is Roman. And William the Conqueror, when he landed in 1066, actually camped with his whole army inside it. Gives some good idea of scale before he moved on to Hastings to defeat Harold, and of course the rest is history. Look at that map. We've got signal stations all the way from Ravenscar down to Filey. East Coast has disappeared, but we have one place, Aldborough, near Hornsey, which might give us a clue for a signal station. And there should be something on the Humber. I explained right at the beginning why the Humber and Brough is so important. The south coast has got loads of these. So, look at that tower. Look at our bastion. Brough and Waite had already suggested the possibility of the embryonic town actually being taken over by the Navy as a naval base and an army base as a possible Saxon shore fort. That's my latest theory anyway. And the fact we found late Roman military equipment as well possibly suggests it. But the Saxon stations, you can see from the picture there, unlike conventional Roman forts by that time. This is a cautionary note for any archaeologist. There's Chris digging away, but look at those layers. See those nice, neat, stripy layers? That's Corder's Trench being backfilled probably in an afternoon, and yet it's made all those layers. So you've got to be very careful when you're looking at archaeological layers and stratigraphy. So I'm delighted that Chris is here. This is what we found in his garden. We've got trenches running across here, trying to find the Roman road. We found a funny ditch feature and lots and lots of things. It is in Paul's garden, sorry. We'll come to Chris's garden next. And evidence there, we've got 4 generations of people digging in that trench from one family. Right, go away. Attention required, yes. There's bound to be some glitch with technology, isn't there? Right, okay, moving quickly on. And we did find a lot of Roman pottery in one corner. It's still a bit enigmatic. It may be one of the outer ditches, it may not be. But certainly there's Catherine with a tray full of Roman pottery. And last year we investigated the other side of this feature, found this layer of stone, and underneath the red deer antler, which you can see at the back of the exhibition there on display. And in Chris's garden, Chris drew our attention to having found what he thought was a Roman road surface. So we did a ground force again, demolishing various structures and cleaning up, and eventually finding in this very wet trench this surface which may be the road with a chalky surface underneath. And this year, thanks to Carol next door, we're going to try and find the other half of it. Some of the finds, some of which are on display, bone die, same in pottery, and this very nice copper alloy ring paralleled in Germany. A medieval find was a mould for a lead spindle wheel. And the nicest find, confirmed as being Roman after quite a lot of debate, is this tiny little pipe plate figurine, either of a late Roman emperor or the god Apollo. As you gather, this has all been a community exercise, and this gives you an idea of the range of people who've been involved. So we can make some conclusions then. Well, in the trenches on the Burrs, there's no obvious sign of the theatre. In some phases, the excavated context matched the D shape, which EPR. We've got 50 centimetres still to go before natural court is reached. That's a natural subsurface. The site has been heavily robbed of stone. We've got evidence for late Roman activity. Corden hinted at that, but we now proved it. And we've got this very nice, large courtyard building. Now, what is it? I can see Matthew's head churning with all sorts of ideas already. Is it a headquarters building of the Saxon Shore Fort? We don't know. It's certainly an imposing building. Very exciting. We've got substantial buildings below it as well. And we've got late Roman military connections. We've got confirmation of the line of the curtain wall, and we've got an internal turret and an external bastion. And in the garden trenches, we've got those waterlogged deposits and a possible Roman road surface. And I hope you'll think so, highly successful community engagement. So what do we want to do this year? Well, we're hoping to complete the full report on the first 2 years. We've got most of the special reports in now, and it's really up to James and I to get our heads together to write it. Post-excavation analysis, we can dig for 2 weeks, but we've got bone, pottery, coins, animal bone, hopefully not human bone, all those to go to specialists, all to be paid for. There's a lot of work involved after the dig. We ought to continue excavating the defences and in the new Rheingarth garden to find the rest of the Roman road. Continued community-based geophysics. That's what we've been doing at Cave Road as part of the Hull Maritime funded project. And this will be hopefully coming in July. You'll for the first time be able to see a permanent structure which will tell you about Roman Brook, just outside the Burrs. It's in production now, all the artwork and text has been done, and hopefully we'll be able to tell you more about that just before the dig starts. Other plans?
Highways office is doing a better lesson this week.
Oh, wonderful. So create virtual tours around Brough based on what you can do with one of these, and the QR code. So we'll be able to switch to virtual Roman Brough. Difficult because our evidence at the moment, as James certainly will support me, is pretty sketchy
Scanty.
about what the buildings were like inside. I'm fairly confident we know what that wall was like. It didn't have a tiled roof, the tower, and no roof tiles in that trench. It wasn't bonded like Pevensey, with that, or like the Montaigne with the Tower of New York. So we've got a pretty good idea. We know there's a round tower and a square tower as well. We're already starting to enhance the displays in the Petuaria Centre, but perhaps we might have more ambitious plans. Wouldn't it be nice if this was excavated fully, all that nice Roman wall to actually look at, and not just be virtual? So, do we re-excavate it, put on display the remains of this north-east stone wall and bastion, maybe within a small heritage centre on the Burrs? Well, we couldn't do any of this without all these sponsors, and I have to make reference to the UK Levelling Up, government Levelling Up funding, which is accessed through the East Riding of Yorkshire, for which very many thanks. Made an enormous difference to what we're doing. The Hull Maritime project, and all those different bodies for their financial and in-kind support. But finally, enormous thanks to all our volunteers. Without you, and many of you here in the audience, none of this would have been possible. So thank you very much for coming along.
It's not bad, is it? It's bad press up. It's a nice fashion. Right then, well, I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard tonight and what you've seen. Yes, we have got ambitious plans for the future, and it will be brilliant to do what Peter's just said. Obviously, everything we do, we have to raise it ourselves, to raise funds from somewhere or other. And there's nothing harder than trying to convince somebody who's got a grant scheme to give you the money, and for the hoops you jump through, it's absolutely amazing. But we've got some fantastic people on the team who can actually nip the way through it, and like I said, we're doing quite well at the moment. But in the future, we need more. So if you want to part with any cash, you can do it. We gratefully accept anything. And I think really that's how it concludes tonight. So,
Can I ask you if there are any questions?
yeah, well, thank you to
Yeah.
James and Peter. But are there any, just before I do the questions, I've been asked to, this Sunday, that here is going to be the venue for a craft fair, an art exhibition, and the pop-up cafe will be on in the entranceways at Gillies during the week. And you can buy your maps for the open gardens as well. So if you've got a bit of time, pop down, have a look and see what's going on out here. So yeah, any questions for the head honchos?
Yeah. Yes.
I was wondering what's growing in that field that the green waste has been put on. What's that field being used for?
It's just it's an arable field at the moment, so it's I think it's wheat, but we have permission to go and do it whenever we want. So when the stubble comes off, we can then go back and resurvey bits. I do want to check to see whether that green waste attenuates over time or not. So that would mean going back every now and again and doing it.
It is a pretty nasty site when you actually see examples of it. I mean, I've tried to, well, I've been talking to Richard over the past few weeks or so about it, and also been talking to the environment team who do, and we posted it again, because you're getting batteries, and you're getting plastic forks, you're getting forks, you're getting plastic, you're getting all sorts of stuff that is definitely not green waste, should never be there. And to me, it's a criminal offence, really, to actually do that.
Well, I know Friday thought they did one and they were finding hypodermic needles in it. So it's green is a complete misnomer. It's anything but green.
Scary, scary.
The moral is, when you put your stuff in the council recycle composting bins, you don't put metal and other stuff in.
Richard,
Peter said earlier that the D-shaped building at the farm was 152 years too late to be a theatre.
Yeah.
Firstly, I just want to object to you besmirching a politician who didn't deliver on a promise.
150 years late.
But he was to look after himself. And secondly, how did you know it was 150 years later than the tablet that had been found by?
Well, we know the tablet's AD 140, the coins and pottery, so the earliest coin was a Julia Gomna, that was in the second year, but the pottery and stuff associated with that layers was from the late 3rd century AD and into the 4th. That's how you date the deposit by the material you find in that layer.
now I was disputing what he said, because that's all it's a council chamber.
But anyway.
And I think it's a garden feature.
What for
It's all interpretation anyway. I mean, all archaeology is. So basically, when we tell you anything, we're just making it up.
Yeah.
But
So if anyone moves around at the time, please tell us what it is.
Yeah,
So what's the example?
one possibility is which kind of disputes the garden theory was there was a very solid gravelly layer inside it. There's a lot of
there wasn't
nails and a lot of there were a lot actually of little studs which you find the calico on the bottom of the Roman sandal. So I think that was a genuine courtyard. And the D-shape is fluke by a layer of stones that might have been put on as part of a hard standing or something.
It's like our Roman theatre on the golf course.
Well, it's all interpretation.
Yeah.
So the reality is we look at things and we make things up, and
Yeah.
then we have to dig them to find out whether that's true or not.
Yeah.
So,
It's solving and
Yeah.
yes.
So,
An
unfortunately,
evolving situation.
you can't bum off to Rome or Avignon or somewhere like that, Arles or Nîmes in France, and find upstanding Roman remains that are towering above your head. What we've got to do here is dig them down. There's even Hadrian's Wall is, shadowless for itself, but most of what we see and fought is actually under grassy banks and has been excavated. That's what people don't appreciate. It's only years and years of digging, which is yeah.
Peter,
Hello,
have we
Bob.
found any signs of any burials
Yeah.
at all?
No,
Because there
not
must
really,
be
no.
somewhere.
Oh yeah, they should. And in fact, I must tomorrow, or when I come back from London, apply for a license to exhume.
I think you may not realise that, but archaeologists nowadays have to apply for a license if we think there's the possibility of encountering human remains. And so we're not allowed to dig them up like we used to.
Because you,
We used to have them in our kitchens and bedrooms. That's all long gone now. You can't have skulls in your bedroom anymore. So it's all got to be above board now.
It's a strong possibility where we're digging in Carroll's garden that we'll get one.
The thing is that we will not find them inside the town because, or it won't be a Roman one, because Romans were not allowed to bury within town walls. So there would have been a set area within which they cannot bury. They'd be outside the walls. But because we will be outside the walls where the road is, there's a possibility. Because very often next to roads was where people were buried, in mausolea, which they would put, as you were walking out the road, you'd say goodbye to auntie as you were travelling away. So they were just there, but outside the walls, not inside.
But another thing to think about, I noticed James said town wall. Was that wall actually a town wall? The theatre inscription was found in a building reused. And I suspect that building was the result of the demolition of earlier features. And a lot of stonework was put into building a new wall. We've got other cases in Roman Britain of a town, suddenly the army come in, we're going to build this wall. They didn't bother, it was there beforehand. If Carausius, it's just a possibility that Carausius and Alexis themselves might have built that. We know we've got Maximian sending, who was the Caesar in the west?
It was Maximian.
Yeah, that's right.
Constantius Clovis as the deputy.
Yes, so Maximian, there were two, Diocletian was in the east, Maximian was in the west. There were 4 emperors at the time. And Maximian sent across Constantius Clovis to actually kick Alexis out. So they got wind of this happening, and they would want to consolidate. And the Humber is a classic place to do it. Stop them getting as far as York, consolidate that building. What we don't see in archaeology is all the politics and things that have been going on, and the struggles to power. All we're seeing is bits of stone, pottery, coins, which help us support some of the historical evidence, which is very, very scanty and unreliable for much of the period.
But that bastion is built in haste because those foundations are pretty ephemeral.
They are.
Yeah, and they're very like London. as
Because
well.
if you, what you wanted a bastion now, it didn't matter if it lasted 30 years, because Constantius Clovis is just over there and he's coming. So
Yeah.
what's that wall now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay then, right. Anyone got any more questions? You're welcome. No? No? Okay. Right, okay then, well, thank you very much for coming and thank you for coming.